Her mission as a therapist is to partner with individuals and families to help them realize their intrinsic worth, strengths, and abilities. She strives to meet people where they are in their lives and encourages them on their journey using warmth, compassion, authenticity, and professionalism. As a human, wife, family member, mother, and friend, she understands the trials and stresses that life throws at us, so she's able to empathize while providing insight and tools that are useful to create growth and change for yourself and your family. Jenna's presentation for the day is called "It's Fine, I'm Fine, Everything is Fine." And without further ado, here's Jenna.
Hello, welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be here virtually with you all today. I really appreciate you guys taking the time this morning, whether you are live with us, hello if you're joining us right this moment live, or whether you're going to be watching this later in your PJs on the couch, getting some CEU credits later on. And so I just want to thank you again. I know Amber and Haley both were thanking you from Resolve, but as an employee myself, I just want to take the time to thank you. I'm excited that you're here with us this morning. Okay, so it's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. First of all, I apologize. I know the title is really vague and you're probably wondering, okay, what am I going to be learning about today? What are we going to be hearing about? And I don't know about you guys, but 2020 has been a month where I have had to say to myself many a times, it's fine, I'm fine, everything's gonna be fine. Typically said in a pretty sarcastic tone of voice, but it's true. You know, this is a time in our lives where we had probably had to say this before. You know, I kind of equate this title though to our careers and the helping profession. A lot of times, we have these moments where things can feel tipsy-turvy. We don't know what's going on. We have heavy cases. We have big things going on. And so when we walk out of sometimes stressful scenarios, we have to say this to ourselves too. It's fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. Okay, we're going to get the presentation loaded here. Okay. All right. Okay, so this first picture you see here is, this is actually my husband and myself. We are on a rafting trip. You know, we were young, this was our 1-year anniversary, and we were like adventurous, we were excited. So we signed up for the highest level of whitewater rafting adventure that we could without, I think, having to be like certified and taking some sort of classes or passing exams. I don't know. We were excited, right? So we get into this raft and we happen to be with 2 other young couples in the raft. And so, you know, the first, I don't know how long, 30 minutes or so of this rafting experience, it is just kind of talking, getting to know each other. The guide is asking us questions, you know, what brings us on this trip? Who are we? Those types of things. And so one of the questions, you know, naturally is, what do you guys do for a living? And I will never forget, you know, it comes around to me, everyone else is in some sort of business profession, and it comes around to me and I say, oh, I'm a child and family therapist. And I am so excited to say this, you know, it's my first time getting to kind of say this out loud. I had just gotten hired as a child and family therapist. I had previously, you know, been working as a school-based social worker. And so that title was very exciting for me. And her immediate response was, oh, yikes, be careful what you say, folks, she's a therapist. And of course, you know, that comes with, you know, whatever her intent was there, right? So we just kind of move on and we continue talking, getting to know each other. And during this part of the rafting trip, you know, I'm just taking in everything. I'm listening to the couples, their stories. And then as we get into the rapids, I'm also like watching them interact. So, you know, there's the couple that's fighting over, you're not paddling fast enough, you need to be paddling this direction or that direction. And they're getting intense. And, you know, there's my husband who's like hit me with the paddle accidentally and my face is bleeding and he doesn't notice it, right? So people could interpret that. But so we go on, right, and have a great rafting trip. Everyone lives and survives. And that night at dinner, my husband and I were talking, And I'm asking, I'm like, oh, remember Carl and Erica? I don't actually remember their names today. This was over 10 years ago. I'm like, oh, do you remember Carl and Erica? What do you think they're going to do the rest of their vacation? And my husband's like, huh? Like blank stare, right? No recognition of Carl and Erica. And I'm like, remember he's the human resources, blah, 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 or whatever he did, and she does such and such. And he, again, blank stare, no recognition. And so, he was thinking about the rapids, right? He's thinking about how much longer do we have this calm water? How quick can we get to the rapids? He's not listening to these people's stories, taking them in, wondering about them 7 hours later. Whereas I'm thinking about these people. I wondered about these people. I don't know how long I wondered about these people, but I liked their stories. I wanted to know them, not enough to Facebook friend request them at that time 10 years ago, but I cared about the people. And so we got Michael Scott over here saying, I'm dead inside. How do I handle this job? And I think that, when the instructor, the guide warned everyone that I was a therapist, really the warning probably could have been to myself, new in my career, watch out, you're a therapist and you're going to take on a lot. You're going to hear a lot of stories. You're going to hear from a lot of people. You're going to, take them on. You're going to want to know them. You're going to care about them pretty deeply. And so that warning really could have been for myself back in that day. Okay, so as Haley was telling you, you guys are going to need a couple of code words throughout this presentation. So your first code word is compassion. So compassion, right? We are going to be talking about both ends of the spectrum today on compassion. We're going to talk about, what is compassion fatigue and what is burnout. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time talking about burnout because I really want the focus to be on that opposite side of the spectrum of compassion. However, I would be remiss not to talk about it a little bit. Okay. So burnout. Again, this is not new news to anybody. We have all probably experienced it working in the helping profession. And when I say helping profession, or the caring profession, we are talking about a large variety of people. We're not just talking about social workers and therapists and case managers. When we look at the research and the data around burnout, this is encompassing a large variety of people. This is looking at, our EMS, our firefighters, police officers. This also takes into account all of the medical professionals out there, nurses and doctors, physicians. It takes into account teachers even. And so, part of it, it makes the data around it a little bit hard to completely know what it is. But what they say is that anywhere from 21 to 67% of those working in the caring profession are experiencing pretty high levels of burnout. So it's often characterized by depersonalization, emotional exhaustion, and a decreased sense of accomplishment. This is also, just FYI, this is one of the questions on the quiz that you guys will be taking for CEUs as well. This will be one of them to kind of pay attention to. All right. So this was an interesting statistic for me. I've been interested in this idea of burnout prevention for quite a while. And have taken lots of courses in it and did some of my own study in it. And this was something new as I was preparing for this presentation to learn that those that are in the younger age brackets and those that are in lower education brackets actually seem to be at an elevated risk of experiencing burnout and compassion fatigue. So, if you are an agency who hires a lot of young staff, if you are an agency who maybe has interns or students that are working for you, I think this is something to really take note of. It's something that we're going to talk about later, how to kind of combat it. But I think it's important to note, I always presumed it's the people like me, right, who've been in it for 10 plus years who are probably burning out or are feeling exhausted with it. And there's actually a much higher rate of those in the younger age brackets with lower education that are burning out really quick. And we want those people, we want them to survive this work. We want them to stay in it and to be motivated. And so we'll talk more about kind of what we can do with that. The studies indicate, burnout, it is widespread and numbers will likely rise. Again, it crosses everybody. Those of us, we are, we're caring and we're dedicated, but it can get to us all. All right, a few more facts. Probably none of this is a surprise to you, But burnout and compassion fatigue is associated with increased symptoms of depression, anxiety, sleep problems, impaired memory, substance use, and neck and back pain. Um, it's also, associated with issues such as difficulty concentrating, intrusive imagery, loss of hope, exhaustion, irritability. It doesn't just affect us in our personal lives. When you think about all those things, that I just mentioned, right? That does not feel great to think that we would be taking on all of that. And when we think about that, obviously it's going to affect us in our personal lives at home, but it also can affect us as part of a member of an organization that we're working for. So on the organizational side, what we see is that people who are experiencing it will potentially have reduced commitment to the agency that they're working for. They might be showing up to work, they've got negative attitudes, they might have increased medical errors, or they're absent from their job more often. Naturally, we're going to see some job dissatisfaction and potentially some high staff turnover as well with this going on. Another thing that I found really interesting, and this is probably, again, no surprise, but when we have these high levels of exhaustion, combined with our probably lower level of our role, we're going to see that lead to our patients, the people that we're working for, that we go into this profession to help and support. We're going to see them be less satisfied in our care. And that's across the board, whether it's in the mental health side of things, patients are reporting less, satisfaction, and then also in the general medicine as well. Okay. All right. So Sigmund Freud, we gotta love his quotes, right? So he says, unexpressed emotions will never die. They are buried alive and will come forth later in uglier ways, which, buried alive, what better timing than Halloween coming up, right? All I can think of is like this mummy coming out of the ground. But I really liked this quote. And when I think about this quote, I think about this whenever I'm working with trauma survivors. And, I often give them this analogy of a bike accident, right? So they are riding their bike and they've fallen and gotten hurt, right? And they have skinned up their knee. It is nasty. There's gravel and there's dirt in it. And the first step that, you probably are going to do is clean that wound out. And that part, I don't know if you guys remember it like I do. I lived on a gravel road growing up, and I would go flying down hills on my bike and wipe out more often than not. And would have the worst like experience was actually putting like the rubbing alcohol or the peroxide on my knee. That cleaning out process was painful. And so, to me, that's what this quote encompasses, is that oftentimes we're encouraging our patients to kind of clean out their wounds, to talk about their emotions, to help heal themselves. But what we miss is often cleaning it out for ourselves and experiencing it ourselves. We are going to look at a clip here. Who better than Brene Brown to kind of explain this? I don't know if you all are familiar with her. I'm guessing most of you are. But who better to talk about that than her? So we are going to get that pulled up here in just a sec. This is when I knew we were kindred spirits for real, because you included my favorite law. We serve up. I've always known that this law applies directly to our lives. It's just not some physical formula. It's huge. So the whole idea of a reaction. There is an equal reaction. Yep. And so when something happens and we emotionally chases us up, that doesn't just dissipate into the air. So every time I feel hurt or feel ashamed or feel angry, I'm going to do something with that. With that energy is really learn.
No audio.
We're getting some feedback that people are having trouble hearing this. Is everyone can they hear me? Is everyone having trouble hearing, or is it just a couple people? 3 people have said they can't hear it. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm sorry for those who can't hear. I'm hoping that some people can, or most people can. So I'll kind of give you a brief synopsis for those who can't. And again, I might have kissed the Blarney Stone in Ireland. However, I did not get the blessing of eloquent speech. So Brene, she's wonderful at that. However, so what she's talking about is how we offload hurt. And she is saying, that for every reaction, for every experience, for every emotion that we feel, there is this energy that is like going out. And so, my takeaway in this message is that, we oftentimes are the holders of everyone else's emotions, and we are asking for them to give it to us all day, every day, no matter what we're doing. Maybe we're not even asking for it in our profession. My mom, she's a special education teacher, and, she's calling me this week and she's like, "Hey, Jenna, I'm sitting in class and I'm teaching math facts to a kindergartner, and he's telling me about an abusive incident that she is probably needing," not probably, she did end up hotlining, So again, us in the caring profession, whether we're asking for emotions, whether we're asking for stories and responses and reactions, we're getting them. And so what she's saying is that our body is holding the score too. Again, oftentimes I think we forget about that piece of it for ourselves. And so, she's talking about when we're offloading hurt, one of the examples she uses is called chandeliering. And so, what she says is that whenever someone has something happen, right, they chandelier, they go up to the ceiling, they have these gigantic responses. And if you work with someone like that, or if that's you in your own home, maybe, I know that's me in my own home. Sometimes my kids accidentally spill something and I've had a long stressful day and I chandelier and I have a response like, "Oh guys, like be careful," or something. And so what she talks about is, that can be trauma inducing in and of itself, as our responses and our reactions. And so she has this quote, and I don't know if we even got to it in the clip before we kind of cut it off. But if you Google it, if you guys want to watch it, for those of you that couldn't hear it, if you go to YouTube and you type in 2 ways to offload hurt and Brene Brown, you'll be able to kind of find this clip to either finish watching it or to hear all of it. And so, she says the body holds the score. I think again, and it keeps track of it, right? And so, and it always wins. And so what we're going to talk about here is how can we offload hurt in a more productive, healthy way. All right. Sorry again for technical difficulties for those of you that could not hear. Okay. All right. So with every negative, there is a positive opposite. Thank goodness, right? And this is the heart of our topic today, is compassion and satisfaction. This is our focus. This is what I want you guys to walk away with, is the positive in this. Dr. Charles Figley, he is a world-renowned expert on burnout. And he says, it is a disorder, that affects those who do their job well. And I have a good friend, we'll call her Katie, but bless her, she works in human resources and for a very large company, and she does all of the firing. And so she always jokes, she's like, "Jenna, thank goodness for you, you are the therapist, because I don't have the compassion. I don't have what it takes to hear their stories. So when they're telling me their woes, all I can think of is all of the red marks in their chart, right? And why they've lost their job." She is not the girlfriend that you are calling when you have a long breakup. She's not going to have that empathy for you in that situation. And Francois Matthew, so she is also a compassion fatigue specialist. She often gives, this analogy for compassion fatigue as the longest breakup ever. And she talks about how When we start out in this career, we are in it, right? Just like when our friend calls us and they're like, oh, this happened and I'm so upset. And we're like, call us day or night, middle of the night, we are here for you, right? We are meeting them day in, day out for coffee. We are like sending them flowers. We are there for it, right? And then the weeks and the months go on. And at some point we're burnt out with it, right? We're like, forget the loser, get over it, right? We're done with it. And unfortunately, sometimes we can get there as well in our careers. I was listening to a presentation last week from the KU School of Social Welfare, and it was on, suicidal ideation. And the presenter was talking about, when he realized he was burnt out was when he was doing a suicide assessment. And he said, the person that he was working with admitted, suicidal ideation, but denied a plan, denied intent or means. And the guy was like, you'll be fine then, don't worry about it. And he said, I literally like stopped in my tracks and was said, oh my gosh, like, I'm sorry, that was not okay. That was not an appropriate reaction in response to you. But I think we've all been there in those moments, whether we said it out loud like that or not, where we were like, whatever, they're fine, get over it, whatever it might be, where we can start to feel that level of burnout too. So how do we mitigate that? Compassion satisfaction. So compassion satisfaction has been defined as the pleasure that a helper gets from doing his or her work well and the ability to contribute to the well-being of others. Our satisfaction in our careers can come from a variety of things. It can come from providing care just in general across the board. It can be to the system in which we're working with. It can be to our work with our colleagues. We can really, enjoy that camaraderie, doing the same type of work. It can be about our beliefs about ourselves, right? I mean, everyone's probably got a little bit of that in them, right? Where we're like, we feel good, we just helped someone. It can be about altruism, and that general belief about contributing to the happiness of other human beings. And so, most of us we find several different types of rewards in serving others, whether it's the ability to ease suffering, whether it's the relationship that we do develop with our clients or our patients. Maybe it's about, the satisfaction and, the resiliency of the human spirit when they are facing difficulties. Again, we can find satisfaction in a variety of topics. So today we're going to be focusing some on that. All right, some good news. The facts earlier, not so great. Here's the good news, guys. So studies indicate that higher levels of compassion satisfaction do mitigate the negative impact of compassion fatigue. How we get there, it's through increased levels of training, through our work experience and competency to help decrease that compassion fatigue. So again, this is an important note. If you have students, if you have, young professionals, please take note, please help them increase their levels of training, get them the hands-on job experience. Maybe that looks like job shadowing, with other workers within the agency, taking that time out to spend a lot of time job shadowing. If they have not had that experience yet, setting them up for that is really important. Some other keys that have been found to improve that job satisfaction include, having manageable workloads, having respect in the workplace, positive recognition, whether that be from their peers, through managers, and then obviously fair pay. Who doesn't want that, right? Studies support also preventative education and training, but it also supports self-care as a big mitigator for compassion fatigue as well. And this is an important one to note that those with realistic professional expectations also have much higher levels of compassion satisfaction. I know myself personally, I went into this career thinking I could save the world, I could save everybody that I worked with, and reality hit pretty quick and pretty hard, right? That's not always the case. My very first professional social work job was in a domestic violence shelter, and I was the children's case manager. And that was a hard one. fun. That was tough, because I worked with the children, not necessarily the parents. And so I heard the children's stories, and I didn't get to necessarily know always outcomes or what was happening on the parent side of the world. But what I would know is I'd see kids coming in and out, in and out, in and out. And I guess I always thought, right, I was going to save them all, and there wasn't always happy endings. And so for those that have a more realistic, view that maybe one intervention, maybe one small thing we say, maybe how we interacted with someone, could kind of build a foundation for future progress, for future relationships, to help them, along their path, that it may not be necessarily saving them in that moment, but we are building that foundation through our work. All right, so I don't know how many of you have heard of the ProQual before, but it is the Professional Quality of Life Scale. And this is an important one to take note of if you have not heard of it before. The ProQual is a 30-item self-report that's designed to help measure the positive and negative effects of helping others. I love this about the ProQual too. It's not just looking at it from this negative side and saying, yep, you're screwed. You've got lots of symptoms of burnout, right? It's also saying, what are these positive things that you still are carrying with you? What's all the good stuff that you got going for you? So the ProQual was developed by Beth Hudnall-Stamm, who's a PhD and has been in use since 1995, with several revisions over the years. The measure was developed with data from over 3,000 participants, which I always think is really nice to know that what we're looking at, has been done through research. And it is today the most commonly used measure with subscales for compassion satisfaction, as well as burnout and compassion fatigue. It kind of breaks it down into those three categories. The ProQual is free to print, so that's nice too. You can go to their website at www.proqual.org and print it out. It does have 29 versions or languages listed on the website. They're awesome. You can change the ProQual as well with their permission. So for instance, if you want to put in, instead of helping professional, if you want to edit it, they allow you to edit it and put in for teachers, for, to kind of change some of the wording. And they can also adapt to other languages they are willing to do. So here is an example of what the ProQual looks like. And what you do on the ProQual is you think about for the last 30 days, and it goes through and asks questions on a 1 through 5 scale. So for instance, I am happy, never, rarely, sometimes, often, very often. And I can't remember now exactly how many questions there are. I want to say like 50, maybe. You'll notice that some of them, if I'm looking at it, number 5, for instance, I jump or am startled by unexpected sounds. When I look at that, I have seen that on a UCLA post-traumatic stress disorder assessment as well. What the ProQual is not designed to do is to diagnose. This is not a measure that's going to diagnose if we ourselves have maybe experienced secondary traumatic stress, which is a term that you guys have probably heard of used kind of simultaneously as compassion fatigue or burnout. So it's not diagnosing any type of mental health condition. It's not going to say, yes, you have, major depression as a result of your work. It's not going to say, yes, you have generalized anxiety or anything else. It is simply a measure to kind of look at these 3 scales. So what you do after you filled out the 1 through 5 scale is you're going to take your score, and they give this to you as well, and you're going to transfer those numbers over and kind of give yourself a rating. So as you can see on that compassion satisfaction side, it'll give you that number and kind of tell you where your level is, low, moderate, high, that sort of thing. And it does that for the burnout and the compassion fatigue scale as well. All right, so this is a picture of the ProQual's theoretical model. So again, professional quality of life, what do we bring to the table? So what you see is, we bring our work environment, we bring our client's environment and our personal environment. People, whether that's us as the professional, or whether that is the people that we're working with, those our colleagues, our peers, or whether that is our clients, we all bring a past and a present to everything that we do. So we bring our schemas, our beliefs, our stigmas, our social support systems, whether those be positive or negative. We bring our own histories of trauma and illness. We bring our economic situations, our families, our friends. We bring all of this to the table just as they do. All of this, what the ProQual says, is that all of this can then point to or lead to both. It can point to compassion satisfaction, or it can lead to more compassion fatigue. And so then if you look at the compassion fatigue, right, that can cause more exhaustion, frustration, anger. We can feel then potentially depressed by work environment. And then as you see there, there's that category also where it talks about potential trauma exposure, whether that's primary or secondary. Okay, so what do we do with our ProQual scores once we have them, once we've looked at them? So individually, personally, I think is the biggest piece of it for you probably. Just to know, I've taken the ProQual myself several times over the years to just kind of know, get a radar for where I'm at, can help us kind of plan where we're going to put our energy in to possibly increase our own resilience. And also help with organizational planning. So, obviously, most employees are probably going to want to keep their scores private. This is not something that you're going to probably go around maybe sharing at your next team meeting where you're at, but it can, in a confidential way, potentially help organizations kind of help maximize their positive aspects. And then certainly, if you're comfortable within supportive supervision scenario, it can be used for information for how to, continue to gain support as well. And this slide in particular was used with permission from ProQual. Okay, so 15 considerations to increase work-life happiness. All right, so here we are. Here is again some of the meat of what we're going to be talking about. This is what a big takeaway. All right. So the first step that we are going to try to do to help increase our compassion satisfaction is we are going to make space for inquiry. I love this quote here. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. So we are going to remember our purpose. We are, I don't know if anyone has read the trauma stewardship book about, it's called An Everyday Guide to Caring for Self While Caring for Others. It's wonderful if you have not, by Laura Vandernoot-Lipsky. She says the quality of our livelihood depends on understanding our intention in regard to our work. So again, whether you're fresh in the field and already starting to feel burnout, whether, social work or teaching or nursing or whatever was the option that you felt like you needed to go into because that's what your family members have done, whatever reason, why did you get here? Maybe it's a good time to take a look. Why am I currently doing what I'm doing? Maybe we've been doing it for 10 years and we're at that point in our career where we're driving by Starbucks and looking at the baristas thinking, man, they've got a good job, and that's okay. It's okay. Actually, Laura talks about this in her book about kind of having this backup plan, and that's not a bad thing to think about other careers. But while we're doing what we're doing, why are we doing it? Is it working for me? And remembering why we're doing it and making space for that, taking time to think about that. Maybe that means truly coming up with like our own little personal mission statement in our work. Maybe we're posting that on a post-it that we're putting on our board somewhere in our office or wherever, but knowing why we're doing what we're doing can be a powerful thing for us. All right, so the mask on the stressed out thing kind of cracked me up, but we need to understand the occupational hazard of our job. That's a big piece of it, is just knowing, what the risks are, knowing that what the burnout symptoms look like, knowing our warning signs. So, Again, Francois Matthew, she calls it the big three warning. So knowing what are our physical, what are our behavioral, and what are the emotional signs that we're often struggling with. She says it might make sense to even have like a green, yellow, red light system that can help you process what's going on. What's your green zone symptoms, your yellow and your red light symptoms. I know personally, this is not something I can always even check myself on. This is something that sometimes I refer to close friends. I'll ask my husband, family members, how do you feel like I'm doing? Where am I at? When you've seen me struggling in my career, when you've seen me having a harder time processing my stress, managing it, what has that looked like for me? How can you tell when that's off? And how can we personally tell when we're off as well? Another way, of course, is by taking that ProQual and looking at that as well. All right, so taking stock, is there room on your plate? So I don't know about you guys, but I missed a good potluck this summer. Thank you, COVID. But this picture made me happy. So, is your plate too full at work or at home? It is possible that, we have taken on a lot, right? Where we take on extra responsibilities. Maybe we are doing a lot of the childcare, with COVID. Another thing that a lot of us have taken on is maybe teaching our own children from home. Are there things that we can potentially delegate? So this might look like coming up with a list of essential responsibilities and maybe some non-essential things. Are there things that we could potentially let go of? So another piece of it is, can we get support as well? Whether that's physical support. So, that might be telling our partner, hey, guess what? You got to do kids' bath tonight. Whether that's emotional support, maybe this is a time where we need to seek out our own, counseling or therapy, or whether that's spiritual support. And last but not least, save a little room for dessert, right? Everyone loves a good potluck and our plates get nice and full. But then maybe we don't have room for that dessert table that looks so good. And so saving room for dessert, what that means to me is saving room for the sweet things in life. I was telling some of the girls earlier as we were kind of waiting to get ready this morning, one of the things that to me was a sweet thing for dessert that I don't know that I have time for right now because my plate is a little bit too full, is making my children's Halloween costume. My mom made mine every year growing up. I always wanted to be the mom that made the Halloween costumes. I like that creative piece of it, and I don't know that I have time for it. And my kids want homemade this year. And that's my sweet dessert that I don't know that I have room for. And so saving that room for those extra things that might pop up and we want to put on our plate is important. So supervision or peer support is another big thing. What that can look like can vary. So that might be a weekly consultation group where you get together with other staff members that either within or with outside of your agency that share your similar work, where you can, kind of confidentially consult on cases. Maybe this is just Monday coffee with coworkers, and maybe it's not case specific, but it's around just general themes or ideas. Maybe it's more formalized and it's something like reflective supervision. Maybe it's shadowing or in-office training opportunities where we're, kind of shadowing our peers, and possibly some paid consultation as well if we have, formalized people that are certified and can provide us that extra level of consultation and support as well. Okay, I personally am not a Walking Dead fan. For those of you who are, you might recognize these characters. It is just beyond my threshold. Accessing our trauma input, how does our day begin and how does it end? Are we watching the news and listening to the news, whether that's on the TV when we're getting ready, whether we're listening to things on our drive into work, whether that's a podcast or an audio book? At nighttime, again, what are we watching? What are the shows? What's the input? If even the things that we think are potentially relaxing us are possible trauma triggers or things that are keeping us a little bit more elevated. I know I'm guilty of, again, Brene Brown. I love the woman. You're going to hear her again a couple times as I'm presenting today. She's wonderful and she's great, but that's not necessarily taking my head out of work, right? When she's talking, I'm often then thinking about other cases or clients and thinking about my work. And so sometimes our trauma input is just focusing a little bit too much. What are our other hours that are spent in the day that are non-clinical? Are we reviewing our charts, doing our notes? Are we talking shop with coworkers? Maybe our spouse is in the field as well. And so again, how much are we kind of separating ourselves from some of this? All right, self-care list for work and home. Everyone knows about self-care, right? But really, this is a time to think about it, especially during the added extra stress of COVID right now. How can we prioritize our self-care, at work and at home? To fill our bucket. Most people have probably heard of the bucket filling philosophy. It's oftentimes taught in preschools and in elementaries. They tell the little kids, be a bucket filler, right? But we're going to talk about how do we fill our own buckets? How do we keep our buckets full? And my little personal quote here is, the bucket that starts full and is regularly filled won't empty as quickly when those leaks occur. And so, the more that we can regularly take those time out of our day is going to be really important. So again, maybe at work, it really does mean, coming up with a little list that we stick in the side of our desk that says, some ideas of things that we can do when we have again, not much break probably during our day, but even 2 minutes. What can we do in 2 minutes? We can get some really good breathing in 2 minutes. Maybe we can play a song that makes us happy, put on a little, essential oil or something on our wrist, take a minute to kind of mindfully apply lotion, that sort of thing. Most of us can find 1 or 2 minutes to take care of ourselves pretty regularly throughout the day, but oftentimes we are not. And so this is an important one as well. Oh, another idea for work was to have like a self-care place in the office. So I know some agencies will even have like a dedicated space that employees can go to, whether it's like a comfy chair, maybe they can even up the ante, right? Make it like a massage chair or something, but they can have some space dedicated in their office that employees can kind of go to with some things nearby to help them take care of themselves. Or they could take a minute out of staff meetings regularly. You could even have like a self-care board posted in your office. People could kind of get awarded, like best self-care idea of the week or something. So just getting creative about it, maybe having some fun is something you could take back to work as well. All right, transition plan from work to home. So one thing that is important too is really that has been proven through the burnout prevention is really distinguishing what is work and what's our personal life. And so this transition plan, how can we separate those two things? And most of us have a commute, whatever that looks like, most of us have a little bit of downtime in between the two places. And so really taking a little bit of time to focus and to separate in that moment. So a couple ideas I had were a mindful moment, maybe using the 5 senses. So we get in our car and maybe we are looking around. Right now the leaves are changing. Maybe we have something we can hear. We turn on a playlist that makes us feel really happy in the car. Maybe we've got a really good smelling car air freshener. Maybe we keep like a special drink or a little snack handy that we can always have. Maybe something soft that we can touch. I know it's silly. You can laugh at me, I won't hear you, but I know my daughter, she takes little stuffies to school. So sometimes they'll be like randomly lying around my very cool minivan and I'll just like be touching her stuffy, on my way home, and I'll like catch myself. I'm like, oh, but it's soothing, it's calming, it makes me think of her. It's this positive imagery. And it's something that I can tactily, feel as well. So having kind of being mindful in that moment, in that car ride home or in that commute, maybe it's taking a few minutes outside your house. Maybe it's in the garage, in the car before you walk in, and you get bombarded with the feeling of needing to, make dinner or do laundry. Another idea is that box on a shelf imagery. So again, there's not a lot that we can do, hopefully we're not doing a ton of work from home. And so, those cares, those worries, those clients that we're thinking about and are probably carrying with us, putting them in a box on a shelf, those are our precious items. It's not that we're discarding them or forgetting about them. It's saying, hey, we're going to take care of this. We're going to put this aside for now though, and we'll come back to it. All right, enhancing your knowledge. Again, that one of the burnout things is those who are younger and maybe don't have as much on hand job training and experience. And so, taking time aside to consider learning a new modality or job skill, just freshening up something that we already know on a previously acquired thing that we've learned, or maybe it's learning something completely brand new can be great too. Maybe it's job shadowing within our agency or requesting that a peer shadow us and give us, helpful critical feedback around what we're doing. Any way that we can kind of enhance our knowledge is really great. And if you're able to get away for trainings, I know when I looked at this picture when I was picking it out, I'm like, gosh, yeah, it's so funny to just think of that huge crowd of people now in today's time. Like it's not necessarily what it looks like. We're all sitting on Zoom right now, but you guys have taken the time to learn something, to grow and to stretch yourselves right now. And so I think it's really important to do that. Make time for leisure and hobbies. So one of the things, unfortunately, that burnout can do to us is to steal our creativity. And so we are going to give it back to ourselves. We're going to create the space for that. Maybe it's even possibly physical space where we are dedicating a little area in our, at our kitchen table to keeping some crayons and a notebook to doodle in. We're going to make time for those non-work related activities and hobbies that maybe we have been passionate about or would like to be interested in, that we have put away or put aside for now because we feel too busy. So maybe it means joining that exercise class or getting into that book club in your neighborhood or taking, a pottery class, whatever it is, just finding those ways to be creative and not worrying so much about the product, but the process of just enjoying and being creative and having time for ourselves. Okay, so maintaining our personal and professional boundaries. We are going to work on monitoring our yeses and our nos and focusing our empathy. A lot of times we can take on, maybe we are the people because again, we are the caring helpers. We are often attracted to this field because of our natural giving ability. And so a lot of times we take on potentially too many yeses, where we are the shoulder that's always getting cried on by our friends. Maybe we are the neighbor that's always ending up watching all of the neighbor kids play in their yard. Maybe we have signed up for too many volunteer activities. And again, all of these are wonderful, great things. However, if we have taken on too many yeses and we're feeling a little bit burned out on our personal boundaries and possibly professional boundaries, are we signing up for too many committees? Are we taking on too many extra work projects? Yes, we all want that golden star at work. However, can this burn us out? Possibly. And then vice versa. Are we saying no to too many opportunities? Do our no's then prevent us from potentially having new experiences, new learning opportunities, new friendships, whatever it might be? Sometimes because of burnout, we have started saying no all the time. And that might also then, equally limit us. So what does that look like? Maybe it means taking a class or a workshop on like our stress, our time management, our problem solving skills. Maybe it's professional resources. It's possible that we have stretched ourselves and maybe we need to even revisit like a code of ethics as far as like, are we taking on too much as far as our clients, things? Are we trying to do their yeses and nos and not giving them, the right to make those decisions and things? So just again, kind of revisiting, looking at those personal and professional boundaries. All right, this is an easy one, connection and collaboration with coworkers. Again, I know that this is a little bit harder in COVID times, but it's really important to connect with our coworkers, to be able to share our interests, outside of work, fun without the purpose of our work. We all have heavy, important, big jobs. And so, that time that we can spend with each other to kind of create that community is really important. All right. So rebalancing our workload. Can you find, 10 minutes for yourself during your work day or for yourself at home? How this can look can vary as far as, what can make the biggest impact for you. This might mean kind of reorganizing your schedule so that your toughest projects or clients or tasks are spread out throughout your week. For some people, myself included, I'm actually the type that I like to kind of get it all done, hit it hard on one day, and then maybe have a lighter afternoon or a lighter day another day. Whatever it might look like, just making sure that you kind of balance it so that it makes sense to you and that you're making time to kind of find time for yourself throughout the day as well to kind of nourish yourself. And then I put in there, take turns on home responsibilities. So again, kind of balancing, I'm trying to look at this from the home perspective and from the work perspective. How do you balance it at home? It might mean if you're typically the one that cooks dinner every night, maybe this means, you've got like a takeout week or something, or your husband or your spouse is cooking the dinner. All right, time away, time off for part-time. So interestingly enough, one of the biggest preventions of compassion fatigue is working part-time. That, I kind of find it humorous because it's just not a possibility. But I think there's wisdom in this knowledge and knowing that part-time employees tend to have a much lower level of burnout. I mean, it's probably no surprise, right? They have more time off. And so I think it's important, again, managers, tune your ears in, if you've got a lot of full-time employees, how can you, again, help them rebalance their workload? Maybe it means not putting as much focus on clinical direct patient care. I know there is a lot of focus right now on productivity, meeting standards, increasing numbers, working with less, because of all the financial and insurance restraints and that sort of thing. However, if we're burning out our employees, what does that look like? And so is there a way to kind of encourage them to regularly schedule time off or potentially, balance their workload in a way that there is less of that? Okay, just a couple left. We're almost out of time here. So prioritizing your health. So we are going to be taking time to fuel our body, not just our mind. So what this might look like is blocking our calendar for lunch. I know it's easy to work right through it or to schedule meetings or consultations, but taking some time to make sure that you are eating, that you're staying hydrated, monitoring our sleep, incorporating movement into our days. And then again, not that anybody wants to use their day off to go get, a dental appointment or a health screening in, but making sure that we are taking time is really important. Again, it's this flight attendant policy, right? Where the flight attendant is asking us to put our mask on ourselves first before we put it on, a child or an elderly or someone that's incapacitated beside us. And so it is important, right, that we do take care of ourselves, especially during this time. Okay, so again, Brene, so she recently did a podcast with Nagoski, Emily and Amelia Nagoski twins on this book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle. And I am like halfway through the book, so I can tell you right now, it's wonderful. I definitely recommend it. But they have said what their approach is that there is a difference between stressors and stress. And so they identify stressors as the things that activate the stress response. So our stressors are our physical things. Maybe it's our kids fighting, maybe it's a big bill that we have due, maybe it's a work-related project, and it can be an internal thing too. Maybe it's our body image. Maybe it's, critical things that we're saying to ourselves, our negative self-talk. But then what happens is that stress is created in our body, and they call it this chemical stew. And they give this example of someone being chased, like in the African safari, by a hippo. And, they're running, and they're, obviously they're scared to death. And then a stranger opens their door and lets them in, and they are safe from the hippo. And what they talk about is that while they are safe, their body is not quite caught up to that yet, right? Your heartbeat is still elevated, your breathing is still not calmed yet. And so what they say is that we must tell our body that it is safe by speaking body language. And so because our bodies can't always separate that physical change, we can't tell it with our mind, and we must feel it. And so they recommend to kind of really break that stress cycle for ourselves, we need to tell our body, you know, we can take those big cleansing deep breaths, we can stretch, we can use our own progressive muscle relaxation, we can get a cold drink. They say affection is a big one to help with it, and laughter, genuine good laughter. Maybe it's dancing it out, whatever it looks like. Again, let your body know that the stress is gone and has been relieved. You know, just paying the bill or breaking up the kids' fight is not necessarily enough. And so again, this was an important one for me, I think, because a lot of times when I have had these tough sessions, I'm saying, okay, got it, worked through it, right? I've solved it for today, seeing them next week. But my body maybe got elevated in that session. Maybe my heart rate increased. And I didn't necessarily tell my body that it's okay, it's fine, I'm fine, everything's fine. All right, and then our last thing here is dig where the ground is soft. So again, you know, just like we want to have realistic expectations for our own clients, we want to have realistic expectations for ourselves. I know that I have not taught you any brand new rocket science today in regards to compassion fatigue or compassion satisfaction. None of my 15 revelations about how to improve your work happiness probably are that brand new. However, I hope that something you can take away. What the phrase dig where the ground is soft means is that, you know, start easy, okay? Be easy on yourself. Find something that is going to be the easiest piece to incorporate into your daily schedule to try and help yourself improve your compassion satisfaction. Okay, and then finally, our last code word is satisfaction. I have resources, and I think we have just a couple minutes for questions if anyone has any. I don't know how much time we have, but if we have any questions, I'm happy to take a question or two.
Okay, Jenna, that was great. Thank you so
absolutely.
much. There's a couple things I wanted to bring just to your attention in terms of what impacted me listening to it. One is that, and I've never heard this, and it's very simple, and there's a lot of things that you said that were simple, and it just touched my heart. One of them was burnout happens when you're doing your job well.
Yeah.
And that just sunk with me. I'm like, oh, of course that's why you feel burnt out, because you're putting your heart in it.
Yeah.
And I felt that, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things that I think would be important to share to everyone is the ProQual link, if that's okay with you. I know you have it in your resources. And then I actually ended up just going ahead and purchasing on Audible while you were talking.
I love it.
I said, trauma stewardship, I absolutely need to read that. So
I have it. You could just borrow it.
Well, there you go. So if we could share that link as well. And then burnout, the secret of unlocking the stress cycle. Okay. So those are two books I think that would be phenomenal for people to kind of have and reference. So if we could share that maybe in Q&A, we'll get that figured out to you guys. And then finally, I think we have a break now until 10:10. Is this right? 10:15. Okay, so you guys get 15 minutes. We'll go ahead and create a slide deck that just kind of is blank, and then see you guys back about 10:15. Our next presentation is James, so he'll be here about then.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Have a good day.